Hey, good Thursday morning, everybody. Welcome to the Volquest Mailbag Podcast. I'm Eric Kane, alongside Austin Price, Rob Lewis, and Brent Hubbs. This episode and every weekly podcast is presented by our friends over at Exterior Home Solutions. Been local and trusted since 1999. And if you have a need for roofing, siding, and garage, whatever the case may be, contact Exterior Home Solutions today at 865-524-5888 or online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. Got a lot of questions here today, so we'll work through as many as we can. We'll start with BC Lion 06. Who do you guys think will have a great chance at contributing next season that's in the signing class from yesterday?
Man, that's a great question. Obviously, if they get David Sanders across the finish line, he would be one, just because of position of need. And I think he's built to be ready. I think one of those linebackers, whether it's Harmon, or Ains. I mean, somebody's going to surprise. Maybe one of the tight ends. I don't know if both of them will, but I think Jack Van Dorsler is probably more ready than Brame right now, physically, to walk in the door and play. Brame, tremendous upside, but he's going to need to put on some weight. And then I wonder about a guy like DeJuan Morris, Hubbs. I mean, kids just makes plays, and there's something to be said for that. Kind of what does Tennessee's running back room look like next year, and how do they kind of feature him if he's able to get on the field?
Yeah, I wonder about a guy like Marion Dye.
Yeah,
does Dye factor, because you go rotating, you rotate pretty heavily at that position. What does that room look like? What do they look like there? Is there a chance that he could be a specialty type player? We saw Joseph's and Pierce played some as a freshman, but Joseph's played a significant amount as a freshman. Now, they didn't have near as much depth then as they do now. But I wonder about, if he shows any ability to get to the quarterback, if that's not someone who would have a chance to potentially contribute beyond just special teams in year number one.
And especially, the two guys you just mentioned, are they back? I wouldn't Pearson going to be back, but what's Joseph's stock look like? That would certainly influence Dye's chances.
We'll go to Jacksonville 24. If we're the away team in the playoff, will we treat it like a bowl prep or a normal away game in terms of traveling for several days in advance or coming up the night before? Didn't know if there were media obligations like they do with normal bowl games.
I think the first game will be treated like a regular road game. You'd fly up on a Friday, play the game on Saturday, fly back after the game. After that, then you get into actual bowls. If Tennessee is in the 8-9 and Oregon's the 1, it would be, Tennessee going to the Rose Bowl if they were able to get past whoever they play. And at that point, then yes, you're going out there for some of those bowl obligations.
Now, was he asking about the team or about your golf plans, AP? Like if that'd be
well, I'm not going to jinx anything, so I'm just not going to talk about it.
First round games on campus facilities will be just regular road games. Is how they will go. Then it changes after that. AP's exactly right.
BarrytheVol says, with the elimination of the national letter of intent, what exactly did recruits sign on Wednesday?
It's a scholarship paper. It's a scholarship agreement. It has much of the similar language as the national letter of intent. It's not as hardcore binding because of the transfer portal that you deal with now, but it's
nothing binding.
Right. It's a scholarship paper that has a lot of the same verbiage that you have in a national letter of intent in it. Is basically what it boils down to. What's interesting is, and in every sport's different, but in the world of football, you can enroll at midterm and you could leave in April without any issue. You can go through 15 days of practice and say, hey, this is not for me and I'm out of here. Now, basketball, that doesn't work that way because the portal window is different in basketball from a timing standpoint. But if you're a midterm enrollee in football, you got all kinds of flexibility. So that's just the world we're in right now.
The ADaug wants to know thoughts on Tennessee's strategy for non-conference opponents going forward, seeing how the committee ranked teams this cycle.
I'd be bringing Carson Newman in EC next year. Seriously, But
seriously, like in terms of cupcake games, but then the season ticket holders, and I think there's actually a question about this in here later on. At some point with rev share and talent fees and all that type of stuff, like your season ticket holders are just like, and we're tired of seeing UTC, Kent State, and barely anything at home, right?
They're tired of taking blood pressure pills too. Every Tuesday night at 7. When the rankings come out.
I mean, at the end of the day, what's more important for you? You know, that you're in the playoff, or that you played a couple of really hard, fun-loving, home and homes with somebody, or a neutral site game with. I mean, do you think Tennessee fans are in love with the fact they're going to open with Syracuse next year in Atlanta? I mean, when you talk about from a playoff standpoint, that game's not going to give you any. It's not going to give you anything. I mean, heck, Miami lost at Syracuse and cost them the playoff. Now that's a conference game for them, but I mean, I think that's one of the byproducts that's going to be really interesting to watch, and it's going to be hard to decide what to do if you're an AD, in my opinion. You guys may disagree, but you're scheduling so far out right now based on what we've just seen this year. Playing those type games, I mean, Clemson would be in much better shape if they'd have played Wofford than Georgia to start the season.
Oh yeah,
so if you're an AD, are you scheduling those? But what do you think the committee, and what do you think this thing's going to look like 5 years from now, 6 years from now, when you actually get to that game? I think that's the interesting part of it that is challenging for ADs when you try to figure out how to schedule.
Yeah, if you're Clemson and you scheduled Wofford and Appalachian State instead of Clemson and Georgia, or instead of South Carolina and Georgia, like how much better are you right now? I mean, you're a one-loss team. You're probably in the top 5. You're in regardless of your deal. I mean, so yeah, I mean, like the question becomes, does the SEC just say, scrap the 8+1 Power 4 rule, just play the 8 and whoever the heck you want to play? Because if that happens, then Florida State's gone, Kentucky, Louisville's gone, Clemson, South Carolina's gone. You start losing a bunch of those kind of interstate matchups that involve two different conferences, even though they're two teams from the same state.
Don't you? I mean, don't you think you get some of that silly state, politics stuff that would make them play?
Maybe. I don't know, man.
I mean, I don't know.
I'm not saying you would or wouldn't. I'm saying, in some cases.
Yeah, I mean it's not like Kentucky's ever going to step the playoffs, so I don't think that really matters.
Yeah, you're right about that one. But I'm just going on the empirical evidence that you have now, especially if you're an SEC AD, you're nuts to schedule LSU in the Jerry Dome. I mean USC in the Jerry Dome or whatever.
Did somebody at some point last Friday night in Athens, Georgia, go, what the hell are we doing playing Georgia Tech in about overtime 4? Like, what's the benefit of us playing this game? I mean, that probably crossed some administrator's mind at that point in the deal, because if you lose that one, where are you from a playoff standpoint if you're Georgia? You know what I mean? And what's the bragging rights to beating Georgia Tech if you're Georgia? I think those are all things everybody's trying to figure out right now, of how do you get into the pool, right? What do you got to do to get into the pool in December? What's the best avenue to do that? I think that's what every conference commissioner and every AD is looking at right now.
All I know is we pulled out of Oak Ridge High School about 10:15 Eastern. That first overtime hit, it carried us all the way to the Marriott down there in Nashville at the airport. That game
it about did.
Ever.
I hate that new rule, by the way. Don't talk to me about 8 overtimes. That's a total crapshoot of one play. I mean, like after the second overtime. I hate when they're talking about 8 overtimes. This is almost the second longest game in history behind Penn State and Illinois.
It's the 8th play, and then you have to take 2 minutes off. I mean, I think the NFL's got it right. I mean, I don't understand why college football, with the way they're doing it now, with 10 minutes, both teams get the ball. If you score, unless you score a touchdown, it might be longer than if. You have
I would tell you that I think the NFL does it right to a degree, but I just think if a team scores a touchdown, Rob, I think they should the other team should still have a chance to score another touchdown.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree with that. Maybe saying they're right is too strong. It's better than what college is.
Yeah, 100%. There you go.
It's better than the sudden death field goal from what it was a couple years ago.
Yes,
that's for sure. All right, 731_V4L wants to know, Austin, can you go through the top in-state 2026 kids and tell us who Tennessee might be heavily involved with? Of course, you've already got 2 that are committed right now in Snead and King.
Percentages.
Yeah, I mean, Craig Tutt's another big one that Tennessee really wants to be in on. Tyreek King. We'll see if Tennessee circles back around to Shavar Young. What do they do down in Chattanooga? You got some kids at Baylor and McCallie that Tennessee likes, but Craig Tutt would be big because that would be 2 years in a row you get a kid from Oakland who's your perennial state power in 6A. I think that would be a big one in the state of Tennessee. there's some kids out in West Tennessee too that Tennessee is evaluating, and we'll see how they continue to monitor and come along. But 26 a really good solid group. I think they're off to a great start with Tyreek King and Carson Snead, two dudes that just have the right mental makeup and can make plays at a high level.
Give me one of these for Zach Groves.
Thumbs up. You definitely want Zach Groves.
Joel Wyatt.
Yes, you want Joel Wyatt. The question is, what does he play? Right, like that. That's the biggest question. About him. Like, is he a safety? Does he grow into a linebacker? In the 90s, you would have said he grows into a linebacker. I'm not sure what does he play. I know he plays receiver, but I think a lot of teams have started to like him more on the defensive side of the ball.
All right, we'll move on to Tnvol. How much contact do Heupel and company have with the 2016 guys, and do they feel like they can come around much? I hope Jauan Jennings, Joshua Dobbs, Alvin Kamara, Sutton, Barnett are all welcome back to the program.
Yeah, they're all come around all the time. However, I mean, they were at the orange and white game.
Yeah, Alvin Kamara in the post game press conference, just being the little fine wall situation.
I'm not sure why it's just specified the 2016 team. Like, it's like what about the 2013 team? What about the 2006 team? I mean, every guy's welcome back. They're all loved up.
And I think Heupel gets that stuff at a high level too, as a former player himself.
Yes,
maybe more so than some others.
You're saying you don't have to call ahead and get on the pass list to come in, Rob?
I wasn't really specifically referencing that, but I also don't think he's threatened by a former player coming in and maybe talking to his team, and he didn't know exactly everything that's being said.
Who are you talking about, Rob?
Mutes his mic. All right. BigOrangeCrush, how many offensive linemen do we bring in through the portal? I'm guessing at least 2, maybe 3.
Again, as we sit here and tape this on Wednesday, get David Sanders in. I don't think Tennessee will bring in a tackle, but I absolutely could see them bringing in at least 2 interior guys, depending on who they could get. But again, at some point, you've got to push some guys that you've signed and develop them into these roles.
Yeah, I mean, I think the question I have is, what do they really think of guys that they currently have in the room? Not what they publicly say. I'm not interested in.
There you go.
I'm not interested in the public comment, but what do they behind closed doors? What do they really think they are with some of these guys in the program? Do they think they're contributors? Do they think they're still a year away? Do they think they can be there in 3 months? That's the unknown for me about what that is. And I think the portal will answer that question for us by how many guys they take in the portal at that offensive line position. I would think maybe 2 inside guys. I don't think you would go more than 2. If you go more than 2, that tells you a lot about what you think about the guys that you currently have and where you think they are in terms of being available and ready to help you right now.
All right, we'll go to Caden here. He says, I sound like a broken record, but am I wrong thinking we will at least be in the top 5 spenders in the portal this year? We have so many holes to fill, and if everything goes according to plan, this will be Nico's final season.
First of all, I don't know what top 5 spender means.
Nobody will ever know.
Nobody's going to know what that is because there's no transparency. There's going to be all kinds of rumors out there. Here's my question, and you guys jump in here. Eric, everybody jump in here. What do we think? I mean, what do we think about the holes that they have to fill? I mean, how many holes does this team have to fill this off season? I mean, I like them at star and corner, assuming all those guys are back, right? Boo, Jamon McCoy, Ricky Gibson. I mean, that's as solid as they've been there. I like where they are at linebacker, Austin. Now, I mean, that means Spillman's got to come on, I think, but I don't dislike their depth with what they're bringing in his class at linebacker. They're not void of talent on the defensive line. Are they as deep as they are right now? No, they're not. So maybe you go there, but it's not like they have a glaring hole on the defensive line.
Don't you think they're getting to the point now? Maybe not everywhere. I mean, the point you were making about the offensive line, I think, is really good. I mean, you'd like to really know what they think, but everybody's always going to take a star edge guy if they can get one. And impact. Everybody will always take, a big play wide receiver if they can get one. But don't you think Tennessee's kind of there where they're, shopping in the luxury aisle now instead of, having to get the staples, having to get bread, milk, and eggs for the roster like they were the past couple of years?
Yes, but I also would tell you that I don't think they're ones that are going to just go and go, okay, this is the can't miss guy. We have to go get him. Like you didn't see them like dying to try to go get Juice Wells a year ago, or some of those other guys that were thought to be high ticket items. Like I think that ultimately they value how do they fit into the program. They're going to do a deep dive into where they've been, what kind of kid they are, what can they find out about, what that kid's been like at the previous school, and then go from there. I'm not saying they won't spend, because that we've seen Lance Hurd, they'll spend. But I think the biggest thing is the fit more so than, hey, I just got to have this shiny toy to get the shiny toy. So I agree. Like, they are shopping in certain spots, at a different level than they were a few years ago. But I think ultimately Heupel and them value fit more than they do anything else.
Well, and also, we just got that's not a panacea. Allegedly Ohio State spent more than anybody. And,
and look at the
Ole
team.
Miss,
Ole Miss,
Florida State.
It's
not a cure-all.
Yeah, two of those teams, one team went 2-10. The other is not going to make the playoff, no matter how much Lane complains. And the other one didn't make the Big Ten championship game, and they will make the playoff. But they just lost.
Nobody happy.
Nobody miserable. Correct. Yeah, So
yeah, and again,
it's kind of like when the Redskins spent all that money that year to go get Bruce, and all those players, and then it came up with nothing.
Yeah, and again, I just don't think. I think Rob, you're right. You're always going to take a rush end. You're always going to take a mature defensive interior lineman. Okay, I think those are a given, but I just don't feel like this roster right now. And maybe it's because I saw all the holes they had in year one, and where they were. I just don't feel like this roster is that depleted to where they've got to go get 8, 10, 12 guys to fill all these holes that they have. I just don't think there's that many holes right now.
I couldn't agree more. I think on the offensive line, you're losing a lot of starters, but that's the only position group that I can think of. You feel good about where you are at tight end. I know you're losing Miles Kitzelman, but you're bringing in 2 guys that you like, and then you lose a couple of receivers. But to be completely frank, your last 2 big transfer portal gets at wide receiver haven't turned out immediately the way you thought they were going to be, right? So, I just think there's a lot of holes to fill on the offensive line more than anything. Athrun wants to know, he's got a couple of things. As this is recorded on Wednesday, how do you feel about the way signing day has shaped up for Tennessee? Austin, I know you and Matt kind of went over that a little bit in the 2-minute drill.
I think it's fine. What have you seen in this particular signing class? You've seen a bunch of flips, and we saw some last year. Tennessee wasn't affected as much, but what you've seen here is Tennessee's gotten their fair share of flips themselves. They flipped Jaden Harmon from Alabama. They flipped DeJuan Morris, from USC. Jaden Perlotti from USC. They flipped, Brendan Haynes from Wisconsin. That's right. At some point, even though it was kind of, Brame counts, but Brame really wanted to be here from the jump, and but yes, they flipped him from Oregon. So Tennessee's had their fair share of flips as well. And let's face it, Isaiah Campbell, decommitted and then took some visits, but in a way they kind of flipped him from Clemson because they continued to work him to the point where he wanted to take visits, even though Clemson doesn't really allow that. So he was willing to decommit from Clemson and come visit Tennessee and North Carolina, and then eventually pick the Vols. So they lost Shady Hayward. That's a blow. Tennessee did not want to lose Shady Hayward. They lost Onus, or at least to this point, because he's not signing. In February. Will they double back around here and be able to keep him in the class? We'll see. But I think what you're seeing here is Tennessee, has been able to get some, they've lost some, and that's maybe a little bit more consternation in the recruiting process that we have seen over the last probably 5 or 10 years, because for the last, at least the last 5 or 6, just Tennessee hadn't had that many flips, 2 or 4 against you. And so I think this year's just a little bit of a different animal.
I wonder, and I know he's got more questions to get to. I do wonder this, though. We've seen a lot of flips around the country. A lot. It feels like we've seen more this year of high-profile guys flipping late than we've seen. Does the push for an earlier signing date surface back around? Does it come back around for that September 1 signing day to where you don't have to deal with all that you're dealing with in the fall right now? Or do coaches like the fact that they could flip guys Yeah, they got to hold on to their guys, but they have the opportunity to flip guys because most of these guys are committing in June and not signing until 5 months later. I think that topic is going to surface again, don't you, AP?
Yeah, I mean, it probably does. The question, it's kind of like the one-time transfer with the TLSAA, though. Like, for 2 years, we've heard it's going to happen. We're sitting here, on December 5th, and it still hasn't happened. And that's not to say it won't happen next week, but, like, sometimes it just takes a while to get to that point.
What are your thoughts on Jamey Chadwell? I know Austin's mentioned him as a guy Danny White might look into if there's ever anything going on here. Seems like UCF is going to try to get him to be their next head coach.
Yeah, I mean, I love Jamey Chadwell. I think he does a great job. He had that head-scratching loss to Kennesaw State earlier this year, but he's done a fantastic job at Coastal. He's done a fantastic job at Liberty. And he took Liberty, with former Vol quarterback Caden Salter to the Fiesta Bowl last year. Now they got trounced, but it doesn't matter. I mean, they still went to the Fiesta Bowl.
Was he really former Vol quarterback, though?
No. Well, yeah, because, I mean, he
was on campus.
He was
on campus for a semester. He was on the team for maybe 2 months.
He had gear.
Yeah.
He had a jersey. He had a locker. He's still got a bunch of Tennessee gear.
I guarantee he's got Tennessee gear.
He's looking for a new home now, too, yeah.
He's a VFL.
He got bowl swag, didn't he, when he early enrollee?
He's a VFL.
He was an early enrollee.
He's got all kinds of bowl swag.
Of course, there were no bowls that year, though, right?
Oh.
There was no bowls the year he came in, I don't think.
But, but the point is I think he does a really nice job, and I think UCF would be a good job for him, to eventually, bounce somewhere bigger.
I mean, this is off topic, but Malzahn, what are y'all's thoughts on Malzahn?
I think that nobody wants to deal with. I mean, like at that level, you're either taking somebody's problems or you're getting your best players poached, and I think I just think he didn't. We look at Caden Salter's leaving Liberty, and he almost left a year ago. But something arose that he couldn't leave. So I mean, like, I think that anytime you're at that level, your best players are always going to kind of get cleaned out year to year, and you're going to have to constantly replace.
So
I think the Central Florida level, Rob, and talking about Gus leaving Central Florida to go be an assistant, which is an unusual thing to see happen. I think the Central Florida job has gotten a lot harder because they're playing in the Big 12. So your competition is different. I know the Big 12 is not dominant, but it's better. I think you're better week in, week out competition than you are in Conference USA. You're playing a bunch of teams out in the Midwest. So now recruiting's a little bit harder, right? Because you've got to deal with a bunch of Florida kids is who you want, but you're playing Colorado and Arizona State and all this other stuff out there. And I think those kids, if they're good enough, they don't come there. And then if they get there and they are good enough, then they look to go to Florida or Miami or Florida State. I don't know. Can UCF have $22 million for rev share, with where they are? They're a pretty young program and with a young fan base. So I think that job with the changing landscape of conferences, rev share and everything else, I think that job's gotten harder. And I just think Gus Malzahn's like, you know what? Auburn's still paying me a crap ton of money. I'll go call some plays for somebody else, go home at night and sleep.
I think that's a really good point. I think it's about I think it has a lot to do where you are in your career. Like if you're young and hungry, like Alex Golish, you probably look at that a lot differently than what you're just talking about when Gus Malzahn goes and takes $20 out of his ATM account and says, "Whoa, remaining balance is $52 million. What am I doing this for?"
I'm still trying to figure out why Gus is coaching. Period. What I mean?
That's my thing. Why are you still coaching?
Exactly.
Why?
Why is Jimbo trying to get the West Virginia job?
Yeah,
I mean, that boggles my mind.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%.
We'll go to Volunteer at 87. Is there any way to avoid what happened with our 2 DB commits in Florida? I guess he's referencing Hayward and Onus. Onus, of course, at the time of this recording, does it look like he's going to sign in this period? And then Shady Hayward, all the momentum toward Florida. Austin, how would you answer that?
He's wanting to know, is there anything we can do? I guess
to hold on to guys, not to have the 11th hour flip, stuff like that.
No, listen.
It's always happened.
Yeah, it's always happened. You go back to the Stone Mountain boys when they flipped LSU. I mean, like that just happens. And like, Shady, it's not like Shady came back and said, "Hey, if you'll come up, in price, I really want to be at Tennessee." He never give Tennessee a chance. So, I mean, it is what it is. Like, you're going to lose guys and you're going to get guys. And that's why I said, kind of like the portal giveth and the portal taketh away. Same thing with recruiting and NIL. And so, again, it's why I said everybody on your team, everyone from Nico on down is eligible to transfer after every season. And that's not to say Nico's transferring, so don't mistake. I'm just saying from the top level to the bottom level, people can transfer, and that can happen. And so that's why you cheer for a particular team year in, year out, and you focus on Tennessee football. Don't worry about individual players because they can come and go. And so don't get attached to guys. Just kind of focus on the guys that are on your own team. And I know I'm getting a little bit on my soapbox here, but I mean, that's just kind of where this thing's at right now with the new world. And the fact is all these agents, and everyone has one, they're always trying to leverage to get more money for their client because they get more money as agents.
Well, remember this too. I mean, the window opens Monday. But you can transfer 365 days out of the year.
That's right.
I mean, you can put on social media on July the 10th, I'm going in the portal when it opens in December if you want to, right? The same way you can come in week 4 and say, hey, coach, I need more money. If you don't give me more money in December, I'm gone.
Yep.
Or hey, I'm playing more than I thought I was going to get to play, or hey, you need me more than you thought, so you got to pay me more, or hey, you're not playing me at all, I'm out of here. And those are conversations that happen basically every day at football programs around the country, 365 days out of the year. That's not when I get to the end of the season, I'll evaluate where I think I am. That evaluation is taking place every day for every kid out there. They're evaluating it every day.
Yep. They're right. They are. And I don't think the fans truly realize how much, like everybody goes, I had somebody tell me the other day, like, well, it's the NFL now. No, it's not. Because if you have a 5-year deal in the NFL, you're not renegotiating every 5 minutes. And that's the problem. Even if a kid signs a 2 or 3 year deal, he wants to renegotiate, and they say they need to renegotiate because guess what? The NCAA had no ability to get out ahead of this, even though they could have. They chose not to. They chose to stick their head in the sands. There's no guardrails on this thing. And so you can kind of come and go as you please. You can transfer many times as you want to, and there's no penalty. And you can just keep asking for more and more and more and more, and it's one big game of chicken. Do you have a chance to leave? Yes, you do.
Yeah, I mean, do we think, Rob, somebody will come to a coach, not necessarily at Tennessee, but around the country, middle of spring practice, and go, Coach, I practiced 8 days with this team. Man, you got to have me a lot more than I thought you did. I'm going to have some more money, or I'm going to leave here. I'm going to leave here the last week of spring practice.
Absolutely. And also, never forget, we're dealing with 18, 19, 20-year-old young men. Never, ever, ever forget that.
And their mamas and daddies.
And everybody, remember some of the decisions and that you made at that age. That's a big part of all this.
Yep.
It is.
All right, we got plenty more questions to get into, but first let's get a word from our friends over at Exterior Home Solutions.
Severe weather can strike at any time in East Tennessee, and Mother Nature can do severe damage to the first and most important line of defense that you and your family have against Mother Nature, and that is your roof. Whenever she strikes, make sure that you call the people that I call. Make sure you trust the people that I trust, and that's my friends at Exterior Home Solutions, because they're more than friends, they're truly family.
Attention boat owners and lake enthusiasts. The Norris Lake Boat Store is your one-stop destination for everything your boat needs year-round. From expert winterization to secure boat storage, top-tier cosmetic repairs, reliable preventative maintenance, you name it, they can all do it. You can get online, visit their store or in person, or get online at norrislakeboatstore.com. And you can also give them a call at 865-256-9839.
All right, we'll jump back into the questions here on the Mailbag edition of the Volquest podcast. We'll go to DolittleVol 5. What's with the Dylan Sampson early fumble thing, Rob? He's going to be an All-American. He's the best player in the SEC, but he's fumbled it 4 times at some impromptu times in the first quarter this year.
I got no answer for it, and especially a guy, you want to talk about somebody that's conscientious about it. This is somebody that cares and works at it, and I don't know. I don't think he's fundamentally unsound, but when it happens so many times, you can't really say that 4 of them are a fluke. But I don't know. For a guy that's as accomplished as he is, it's pretty unusual
It's bizarre, Brett. I want to say, was it the Georgia game or it was the Kentucky game? Johnson Dumas, that linebacker, he played at Georgia. He went down and protected the football, and he just smacked it out. I mean, sometimes fumbles happen, but yeah, I mean, as Rob pointed out, he's very conscientious. I mean, he's not lazy with the football.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would say, and I think you heard Darrell Sims say this, I mean, sometimes you got to give up on a play. Like sometimes you're not going to spin out of, 4 people with their arms on you and ripping at the football. Sometimes you just got to, hey, I got 6, and 6 is all I can get. I don't think that's why he has all those fumbles. But I think sometimes he opens himself up for that because he's trying to, fight for a little bit more, that type of thing. I think that's something you have to be conscious of. I can promise you this, on every NFL scouting sheet for Dylan Sampson, ball security is now on that with a question mark, is now on his sheet. And I think that's unfair because he's been really good with the ball, but you don't fumble it 4 times the back half of the season and that not show up in your scouting report.
Another one here. Why does it feel like the loss at Arkansas is the only bad loss in the country this year? It feels like it holds Tennessee up big time, but nobody talks about the Notre Dame loss, the Ole Miss loss, and all the other losses in the college football playoff conversation.
Yeah, again, because the committee's a joke. They pick and choose, what their narrative is week to week. Listen, we all have, local bias because we're covering Tennessee. So, we're able to see the warts here. We're able to and still see the warts at other places. But, when you have the national media starting to point out, like, the number of spots that, Ohio State fell compared to Miami. Now, I think that's a bit flawed, too, because, again, Miami, got away by the skin of their teeth with how many wins this year, and they don't have any real quality wins. So, you can make a case against Miami just like you can make a case for Miami. But like, you're right. I think it's a bit of a joke that they talked about that, but they didn't talk about Ole Miss's loss to a 4-8 Kentucky team. They don't talk about, that Michigan, was a prop, win for Indiana, just a few weeks ago. And now, that's the same Michigan team that, struggled most of the year, but did find a way with a walk-on to beat, Ohio State, a team that has $1 bajillion poured into it.
That's hilarious. Like Michigan, it's a humiliating loss for Ohio State, yet, that's a great win for Indiana. How can both of those things be true?
All right, this one's from DolittleVol. Now that most of the schools who plan on making a move have fired their coach, has anything that has happened or not happened with the coaching carousel been a surprise to you? And has there been any chatter on Tim Banks getting attention anywhere else? That's a good question, but I do want to start off with, is anybody surprised, like, the no SEC coach going to get fired this year? Like, Sam Pittman's been retained, Napier saved his job, Clark Lee obviously saved his job. Like, I would have lost that bet entering the season.
Well, I think a lot of people had Beamer on that hot seat entering the season, and that dude just went out and went 9-3.
Now Ohio State wants him.
I think a couple of things. One, I'm not saying guys are going to get longer leashes, but I do think you have to look at that for a couple of reasons. One, how much it costs you to make a coaching change now, what that means with your current roster in terms of everybody fleeting, and what it means to a recruiting class. What is it? North Carolina's signed like 5 people on signing day. They got a class of 5, and they're probably going to have another 15 or so go into the portal, maybe 20 go into. Timing wise, there's nothing good about making a coaching change in November, early December in college football. So does that make you hesitant to make a change, or do we change the cycle of firing coaches and moving into January after you've already got, your commitments in there, and after you've signed and you close the transfer portal window? But because I think if you get rid of a coach the week of Thanksgiving, the week before, man, it eliminates it. It eliminates the class, and you're going to have a hard time putting 65, 70 guys on the field.
Not only does it eliminate the class, it pretty much punts the next season almost. Yeah. I think you're going to look like I think the exception is going to be what Josh did here in 2021, and I don't know if he could repeat that, with the way the transfers and NIL is now. But I think you're going to look like Mississippi State this year. And that's not a criticism. I think that's. Well, I think that's going to be the norm.
I think Mississippi State had 50 new players on their team.
I think that's going to be the new normal if you fire your coach.
Yeah, and you better. I'll say this too: if you're going to fire your coach, if you're in a coaching search and you don't have a coach in place by Monday morning when the portal window opens, then you're really putting yourself behind the 8 ball, because you need to have a staff in place, and you need to have a plan in place that you can go and attack that portal window when it opens up first thing, because all those guys ain't sitting around waiting to January and see who all comes after them. They're gonna take whatever the best option is early out of the gate. So if I've got a coaching search going on right now, I want to introduce somebody Sunday afternoon and let them go to work on the portal Monday morning.
All right, we'll move on. Question about home playoff games. If they're, it's Tennessee, an outside chance of having a home playoff game, but just in general, will they look more like true road games, like running through the T, third down for what, all that, or NCAA baseball, softball regionals where they try to minimize the in-stadium home advantage?
This is not an NCAA event. They don't own the college football playoff. This will be a road game. The whole intent of it is to be a road game.
There are, though I am told there are certain things that the home teams would not be able to do. I don't know exactly what those are.
I was going to say, what are those things?
I don't know. I was just told that there's a several-page document. There are certain things that home schools will not be allowed to do in the CFP. I don't know. Again, I don't know what that is. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just explaining to you what I was told yesterday was that there is a document of certain things that they can't do. I mean, I don't think it would prevent Tennessee from passing out 100,000 shakers or Penn State
running through the
out
T
or whatever. Yeah. But I mean, there are certain things that you won't be able to do, or for whatever reason.
I think Jeff Jarnagin can still do it. But
it's still going to be.
I would say maybe bring people out during TV timeouts in the end zone and recognize the track team.
I can see that. You can't have Peyton Manning down on the field before the game waving at everybody. Like in a call out moment, something like that.
I mean, I think the intent is for it to be a true road game,
which it will be off the number of fans.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the intent of it is to be somewhat of a neutral site game or anything like that. I mean,
that's right.
I mean, are there real restrictions for baseball and super regionals and regular regional play? I mean, did that not feel like a home game when Tennessee was playing somebody in a super regional?
The only thing in those is you're playing at your home stadium and you're the away team. That's stupid.
There you go.
That's dumb. That's a whole different set of deals.
Unless they make Tennessee the home team wherever they're at, they get to wear orange.
Yeah. Hey, Eric, could we go back to get to the second part of the previous question about Tim Banks? Because I think
we skipped over that.
I think he was more interested probably in Tim Banks than my soapbox about coaching change, timing, and all that. I think with Tim, it's going to be what job would Tim want to really go after? Okay, in this day and age versus what you could make to be a defensive coordinator. And then I think the other thing with Tim is who gets a job at the Power 4 level that he has a relationship with that might have interest in him being their defensive coordinator, and would he entertain that? We'll see. I don't see a bunch of lower level jobs, I guess, quote, entry level jobs, if you will, right now that seems very appealing to me. But we'll see if anything comes out of that. I mean, I think Tim Banks is going to entertain. I mean, he's on a contract that expires in January. I think he's going to entertain everything out there. Tennessee's trying to keep him. They want to keep him. But I think he is going to be open to whatever is out there. I just don't know that there's anything out there extremely appealing right now for Tim Banks.
SoddyDaiseyVol says, do you guys see any Tennessee players jumping in the portal before the playoffs start, or do those players stick it out until after the season? We've already seen a couple of guys announce their intentions of entering the portal. Bison Lang earlier this week, Khalifa Keith. Expect that to still be a thing leading on into the playoffs, guys?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think you're going to see a starter necessarily go into the portal, a major contributor go into that. But, I mean, I think you're going to continue to see movement, AP.
Yeah, correct. And remember this, let's say Tennessee wins their first round game, then they go to whatever bowl game that is on the first. If Tennessee lost that game, then everybody on Tennessee's team would have up to 5 days after the completion of that game to go into the portal. So, again, I think it behooves you to win, because then it makes that window to get in much tighter for any players that are on the fence or not on the fence.
ATLVFL wants to know, do you still think there is an NIL threshold for when it makes more sense to invest in a portal player than high school? And are we figuring out which positions just aren't worth top dollar to a high school player, such as safety?
I think it just all depends. I mean, like, Tennessee's not going to pay, a running back $1 million, right? Whereas, like, if you listen to everybody that works the NIL game, Ohio State was willing to do that with, Judkins and, Travion Henderson. So, they've got a ton of money tied up in two backs, whereas Tennessee just doesn't work that way. They view it more like the NFL model, like quarterbacks, guys that can sack the quarterback, and guys that can protect the quarterback, and then it trickles down from there. So, like, again, but each position, each player, depending on your need, you may just need a safety, Hubs, and you may have to go out and pay a little more for that safety than you normally would, but you got to have them.
Yeah, I mean, every situation's different. I mean, you said it best. I mean, what's somebody's value? Somebody's value is what somebody's willing to pay them. And depending on how desperate you are for somebody at some position, you might overpay. I still think the question is going to get back to who is going to be the person that steps in and tells a head coach and a coaching staff, no, we're not doing that. We're not paying them that much money. It's not going to happen. Go find somebody else go get somebody at a better value. We're not going that route. When do we really get to that point? Because I still think coaches are in the mode of, we got to have them, go get them, raise the money, find the money, whatever it takes. When do you get to the point where you go, nope, too hot, too expensive for us, we're not doing that one. We're going in a different direction here because we value this position lower than they value that position going after that player. When does that come into vogue? And who is the person that steps in and tells a coach that?
Let's go to Volfrombama. How does Heup and Co fix the on-field discipline penalty issues before next season? Rob,
Did we get this question last year?
I mean, you get it every week. I mean, and people like, will somebody please ask Coach Heup? Heupel gets asked about it all the time. I mean, I don't know what the answer is. I mean, it's happened. I mean, it's not just Hubbard. Correct me if I'm wrong. It was a problem at UCF too, right?
Yeah, they've been a heavily penalized team where he's been a head coach. And some of it's just boneheaded plays. I mean,
I was going to say, I think the poster, I erased half the question. But like the offsides, like what in the world? Why are they lining up offsides? Like that stuff is so correctable, right?
I don't have any idea. I wish I had an answer.
I can't answer. And I will say,
they average 3 a game.
And I will say the guy that most people and fans certainly would say that is the best assistant coach on the team. Rodney Garner's guys had the same problem. I mean, Caleb Aaron had 3 in one game, didn't he?
Yep.
Just line straight up off sides.
and like probably 8 or 9 snaps. Like it's incredible. It was announced on Saturday that Andrew Luck is going to return to Stanford and be the GM of the football program. Do you think we start seeing more official moves going that way in college football? And if so, what type of people should be candidates for those jobs?
I don't know. We'll see. I don't think you're. I mean, like, I guess is he asking like, is Josh Dobbs going to return and be the whatever because Andrew Luck is? I just think everything's different. You might see that in some schools and some schools not.
Again, what's Andrew Luck's power level at Stanford? Is he walking into the office? What I was talking about in the last question about NIL and the threshold. Is he walking into the office with the coach at Stanford and saying, okay, here's our budget for each position group. Okay, we paid this guy X amount last year. He didn't play X enough snaps. You got to run him off. We're cutting him. We're putting him on the waiver wires because you're not playing him. We got to have the money back on that cap. Does he have that kind of authority and that kind of coach, here's your roster. I put your roster together for you. You go coach it. That's not a world of college football. That's never been the world of college football. I mean, do we really think it's going to transition into that to where all these coaches are going to surrender their power to a GM who's going to hand them a group of players to go develop and coach? And you figure out how to keep them happy, coach, because they're your responsibility for the next year. And then we'll give you the next year's list, come February and see what that deal is. I think that's the question of what is a true GM in college sports.
And in a power dynamic where the head coach is already making, in most cases, 4 or 5 more times than his theoretical boss.
Volmanninetyeight wants to know if all 5 of the starting defensive backs will be back next year. No, Will Brooks is out of eligibility, but everybody else, I mean, things can happen, of course, but, McCoy's an underclassman, Gibson underclassman, Carter an underclassman, Turrentine's got another year, Thomas, Jordan Thomas.
But again, they're all eligible to also leave.
Yeah.
Again, I'm just going to beat that drum. Like, don't tie yourselves to players. I don't know that anybody's leaving, but I can promise you, people in the back channel, I've seen Boo Carter this year and said, oh, got to have Boo Carter. Seen Jermon McCoy. Hey, he's from Texas. Let's try to get him to come home. Like, call his high school coach, see if we can get involved. Like, that stuff is going on everywhere at every school. It's not a Tennessee thing. It's at everything.
Nashville 615's got a couple. Why do you think there's been more decommitment drama this year compared to the last 2 to 3 years? You guys spoke on this a moment ago. Not necessarily just Tennessee, but just in general in college football.
Well, I mean, I think in certain cases you've had because guys have been committed and people have looked for somebody over the last 4 months, have had a time to get an NIL package together and kind of swoop in late and, wine and dine somebody. And I mean, what's fascinating to me, and this is why I asked the question earlier about an earlier signing date, and I'm with you, AP. I don't think it's coming on the horizon, but look at the number. But
you got to start talking about it to make it happen, right? Like, you have to start talking about it a lot for it to happen.
And I don't know if it should happen or not, but if I'm a coach and I'm sitting here and I've had multiple players committed for 250, 300 days, and we couldn't get to the finish line with them, that's too long to be trying to hold on to a commit, or even go back to just in the June time, of a couple of 100 days. That's a long time to hold on to people. And does that, because of that, does that narrative start to take shape? I don't know, but we've seen more people who have been committed for months upon months decommit, high-profile guys decommit this year than I can remember in a long, long time, maybe ever.
I'm in favor of 9 SEC conference games, but understand that's probably not likely. However, with all the talent, here's the question I was talking about. With all the talent fees, NIL, all that's being asked of the fans and donors at some point, is there going to be pushback? A season ticket holder with UTC, Kent State, UTEP games are tough to watch when only more is being asked of us every year.
Okay, if that's going to be the case, then don't hold your coach accountable that he has to be in the playoffs all the time.
100%.
If you're going to put that on there because you want the entertainment value in September to be higher, then the coach should have a longer leash if he doesn't make the playoffs on a regular basis. Now, if you schedule light and you schedule bad home games, then your coach better get you to the playoffs on a regular basis. I think that's the yin and the yang of it for me.
Agreed.
Last one's going to go to WiseVol 24. Has Mike Matthews played the last few weeks, gained the coach's trust in him so he can get more playing time? The kid looks to have the it factor.
Yes, I think so. I do think that, his ability to do the little things early maybe hampered him. He's doing the little things now. It's kind of like Boo Carter. When you do the little things on and off the field the right way, you start to see more and more playing time. Same thing with Mike. I don't think he was doing anything bad, but I just think like little things like, blocking down the field, holding your block, little stuff like that were reasons why it was kind of holding him back. He started to figure that out a little bit more, so you started to play more.
And you got more confidence for him because you had to throw him on the field at Vanderbilt, and he performed well in a situation where he was playing a lot of snaps. It wasn't, Rob, hey, let's try to rotate him in and get him a series here or there. It's, hey, we're down 2 outside receivers. He's the next man up. Mike, you got to play the whole entire second half, and I think when you do that and you do it well enough, then you further gain people's trust as opposed to, hey, let's try to get him a half dozen snaps, or let's try to get him 20 snaps in this game and rotate him in. They didn't have a choice on Saturday, and he answered the call.
Well, and at that position, you better earn the trust of your quarterback too. And it's pretty. I mean, Nico wasn't shy about going to him. I don't care. I mean, you guys know this. I mean, you can be best friends and everything off the field and hang out every night, but that quarterback ain't going your way if he doesn't trust you to be where you're going to be, because if he doesn't think, worried about you making you look bad. And it was pretty obvious that Nico had trust in him, in a big spot.
Yeah, Mike Matthews wasn't running the wrong way, so he did a really, really good job. And ultimately, he's a guy that fans want to see. He's a guy that probably should have been getting a little bit more run throughout the season, but I think he did a good job on Saturday. Played a season-high 42 snaps, I believe, and, of course, had a touchdown reception. I appreciate you guys, as always, for sending in your questions to the mailbag portion of the show, presented by our friends over at Exterior Home Solution, local and trusted since 1999. If you have a need for garage, roofing, siding, whatever the case may be, you can contact Exterior Home Solutions today. That phone number is at 865-524-5888 or online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. For Rob Lewis, Brent Hubbs, Austin Price, I'm Eric Kane. A lot going on at the website right now. We got hoops, recruiting talk, college football playoff conversations. Come join us, hang out with us on the Journalist Quarters. All that and more at Volquest.com.